Jay Jain and his company Moving Mountains Logistics are leading the charge in electric-powered last-mile delivery. They've begun to reshape how goods are moved in, out, and around the city, proving that there's always a way forward in electrification.
Welcome to the Go Electric Fleet Show. This is where we sit down and chat about EV fleets, infrastructure, and more. Join us as we explore EV fleets here in BC.
I'm Jay Jain, I'm CEO of Moving Mountains Logistics. We pioneered fleet electrification, and we're the biggest, or by far the most electrified fleet in British Columbia. It all started in 2022 when Ford came out with their first battery electric cargo product, which was the Ford E-Transit. And it struck me, it's like, oh, can last mile delivery be electrified? Because our driving distance really isn't that long, and it's mostly idling. So electrification makes the most amount of sense in that space. So being outside of Metro Vancouver, you often get dismissed when you have creative ideas, anything to do with the environment, anything to do with sustainability, or anything to do with innovation when it comes to road cargo transport. So we were often dismissed that, nope, it's not gonna work out, electric's just not it. And I said, nope, it will work out. It just makes total sense. Fleet electrification is the future. And if we don't hop on it soon enough, then we're gonna miss this opportunity window that we have for a short while. So that's where it all started. So we got our first Ford E-Transit, and from there, we just got on a roll, and now we have a massive fleet, which equates to daily charging of 2.4 megawatts.
So when did you start this electrification journey? Which year?
So it was late October 2022, right when the Ford E-Transit first started becoming available to general public for purchase. We were the first buyers of Ford E-Transit in interior BC region. Matter of fact, ours had to be imported from the Lower Mainland because there was none for sale in the region at that time.
This whole electrification transition for you, you've obviously encountered some major logistical challenges during this process. So tell us a little bit about that journey with transit of vehicles from the Lower Mainland, as you said, charging infrastructure, etc. Give us an insight about the challenges that you faced over this time.
I'm gonna say the biggest challenge that we've ever faced, and we still face based on daily basis, is OEM challenges. We have the product out there, fantastic product, but the service side, the sales support side, the sales educational standpoint is lacking. I remember when we first got into the E-Transit, it was me telling the salesman all the features about this van. And it struck me that, okay, there needs to be more training in terms of the availability of the educational resources the OEMs have. And then realistically, all these challenges, when we think about them from the ground-based principles, it's innovative, and it's a new industry, and it's a new product. So consumers have to be ready, and fleets ourselves, we started ready. We looked for our sites with enough power capacity so we can install our level 2 chargers. We researched the product ourselves before we go ahead and buy it. Perhaps the reason you don't see a variety of OEMs available at site, but just some hand-picked units.
The last mile delivery is such an important element of logistics. How have you seen the business grow in the Kamloops region to date?
That's a great question. So last mile delivery, when you think about it from the granular perspective, you're not going a very long distance, but you're idling a lot. So if you take the metrics from an internal combustion engine and an EV van, you're almost 3 times more profitable running an electric vehicle compared to an internal combustion engine. So we did the math, and we were using that, we were better able to offer more competitive rates to our business partners, which in return was more growth for us to add more electric vehicle units into our fleet. We do the most challenging routes in an electric vehicle, which is Kamloops to Lillooet, Kamloops to Lytton, Kamloops servicing Salmon Arm. These are incredibly challenging routes, which normal consumption is anywhere from 120 to 140 liters of gas or diesel equivalent. And we are doing that at bare minimum cost, running on our electric fleet there. It just works. It just works for us. And if you talk about last mile delivery in Kamloops alone, see, we're in the future. E-commerce has become the norm. 1 in 5 households shop daily online. So we have a huge challenge on our enterprise in terms of sustainability. How can we get the goods from point A to point B in the most sustainable way? Because if you scale back to 2015 or 2014, E-commerce was there, but last mile delivery wasn't a big subject. It wasn't a big subject for conversation. Kamloops maybe had a volume of 2 to 3 or 1,500 packages every day, running about 10 vans. And today, with the e-commerce boom, post-pandemic, we're at 15,000 packages daily.
Wow.
So it's gone up by 10 times. But our road infrastructure, everything else is still pretty much stagnated if you look back a decade. So we had this interesting challenge is, okay, we're increasing the number of vehicles on the road by almost 25 times. It would be preposterous if they're all internal combustion, because then we're not helping anything, but we're just making it even more toxic for the local air environment. So perhaps that just the aspect of adding EV into the last mile delivery realm makes it more sustainable and makes it more efficient too.
You're talking about running these very complicated routes or these difficult routes to Lillooet and Salmon Arm. Do you rely on DC fast charge infrastructure on those routes to be able to sufficiently fulfill those markets?
This has been a subject for conversation over and over again with our internal team. So our principle is 70-20-10 is what we follow. 70% level 2 charging, 20% is what we leave for DCFC, which is the public charging in case of emergencies, that we do have to use them, and 10% is our portable charger, which is extreme urgency. So we solely don't rely on a 100% charged van. If you think about it, we're usually leaving the depot at 100% battery, but our route planning works in a way that we always end up at a public charger.
Operating in the interior BC, obviously we've got harsh winter conditions, there's elevation gain and things like that. So how have you guys coped with the winter and the cold in terms of battery degradation and sort of like the limits of your range? Have you found that that is a big factor?
I think it just boils down to, okay, first of all, it is a challenge. There's no denying, there's no glazing the fact that no EVs work in every climate. There is a challenge for everything. So if we think about the battery mentality, every time the temperature sort of drops below -5, 20% of our vehicle's battery is consumed just for keeping the remaining 80% warm.
Yeah.
So we follow that same mindset. Okay, preconditioning is not emphasized on enough. Preconditioning is the biggest thing. Get your cabins warmed up, get your batteries warmed up while your van is still plugged into a charger. Some would disregard that and say that's dangerous, but it's really not. Not if it's a level 2 charger. There's no harm you can do to the battery. Precondition it, and just like same mentality as an internal combustion, when the temperature goes below -5, you have to precondition your motor. You cannot just get in and go. You will ruin it. You will ruin the fluids. So sort of a similar concept with EVs as well, but we haven't seen it to be a big challenge. It's just pre-planning.
So you wake up in the morning and everything's plugged in. Are all the vehicles capable of sort of like scheduling that preconditioning phase where they're doing it automatically and they're sort of good to go for deliveries as soon as possible?
Absolutely. I think OEMs in that respect have done a fantastic job in giving the fleet owners the ability to remote start the vehicles, to precondition the cabins, and that's a very underrated feature. So yes, you have your dashboard, you have your fleet metrics right in front of you, and you can schedule waking up cycles for each van every day in the morning. And I think it all works out if it's all well planned.
In terms of parts and servicing out of the Lower Mainland, your relationship with the OEMs to get parts and the vehicles serviced and fixed here under warranties, if they're still under warranty, who does that work? And how do you coordinate the vehicles through sort of the cycle or cycling them out to be able to get that work done in a sort of a timely manner?
Sure, that's an interesting question, and perhaps, if not a challenge, one of the biggest challenges that we face of operating out of Metro Vancouver region. It's almost sad that everything's just, stagnated within Metro Vancouver, and we don't get service centers in interior region for electric vehicles. You were in our shop and you saw that we have to do some minimal work on our own because we cannot afford, in terms of time perspective, in terms of financial perspective, to have a van out of commission for weeks at a given time. So that needs to be discussed more, I think, within the Auto Association on how OEMs are going to provide servicing to regions that are outside of Metro Vancouver region, which should sound pretty obvious when you think about it, that there has to be some service outside of Metro Vancouver region. So I'll give you the biggest example is with one of our bright drops. One of the roller gates stopped working and we needed it serviced, and the van had to be taken down to Vancouver. So us as fleet owners operating outside of the Metro Vancouver region, we had to come up with our own game plan and fixed it ourselves. If I may take a moment and emphasize this point that I've been thinking about for a few months, is open sourcing OEM softwares. We're not just open sourcing, giving local mechanics education and access to the software for the vehicle, for the telemetrics. If there is anything wrong with the structural integrity of the vehicle, yes, any average Joe can fix that. When you start tapping into the high voltage stuff, when you start tapping into the HVAC system of the van, that's where it's out of your territory unless you have access to the system. Real world example, Lion 6. You cannot work on their truck unless you have access to their software, and it's a super restricted access which is only in control of a few individuals operating out of Quebec. Major challenge. So if any OEMs hear this, please consider open sourcing the very base fundamental level of your software, or at least give some access, a paid access, to local automotive companies.
Yeah, that must be challenging working with a company like Lion if you're unable to sort of get service immediately or 24/7 support over the phone, and you have a vehicle that's stranded or needs, you know, critical help. Yeah, especially if you're on a route on the way to Lillooet or something like that.
Someone brought up a really important point to me at a recent conference in Vancouver is, well, let's get into long-haul electrification. That long-haul electrification is not possible. It just is not. And it struck me and I asked a simple question, why? Well, if your EV truck breaks down on the side of the road, no one can just show up with a wrench and a hammer and fix it for you.
Yeah.
You need actual access to the software. So that's where the thought originated from, that clearly this is the future. Clearly we have a mandate by 2035 to have majority portion of road transport electrified. That only gives us the opportunity to explore a whole different sector of automotive, which is EV repairs and EV roadside servicing. And in my opinion and in my headspace, it's only possible if OEMs were ready to provide access to their software to local automotive teams and create a different sector of economy for them.
Tell me a little bit about the funding and incentives from the province and the federal government that you've accessed to be able to purchase your fleet vehicles.
Yeah, absolutely. Those play a big role in fleet electrification. IMHZEV by federal government. If you have a Class 8 tractor, that funds up to $150,000, or in some cases $200,000. We have Go Electric, medium heavy duty rebates by the province of British Columbia that's administrated by Fraser Basin Council. Another thing to take advantage of if you're thinking of electrification. We've used those fundings. They've greatly helped us out, and in some way it wouldn't have been possible if those fundings were not in place. So I really do hope that the province continues on funding these net zero electrification goals, and so does the federal government. But yes, so if you have a Class 2B vehicle, you could be funded up to $10,000. If you have a Class 3 vehicle, you could be funded up to $40,000. If you have a Class 5, 6, 7 vehicle, you could be funded up to $100,000. And if you have a Class 8, you can be funded up to $200,000. And federal and provincial can be combined. So those are great funding opportunities. Definitely helped us out in our fleet electrification. But on the contrary, these fundings are not going to be, forever. It's not going to be indefinite. It will expire soon, but it does give, again, the OEMs a chance to reduce the cost of the product. So it's more accessible to the fleets. The metrics make sense, the drive terrain makes sense, and it's still questionable to me why some fleets still go for internal combustion vans. Every time I see a Ford Sprinter diesel on the road, I cannot emphasize enough, have you looked at the e-Sprinter? It's a beautiful van. You get equivalent amount of range, and there's enough DCFC available province-wide now that you can tackle any route.
So in saying that, if you were to be inspiring or sort of leading other logistics companies or other companies that are interested in buying vans or trucks or of that sort, would you recommend a lease or an own sort of business model? What's the best way to sort of dive into this so that people can sort of test the waters if they're unsure about this being the future of their electric fleet?
All right, let's break it down first by what's possible currently and what's not possible. So anything up to Class 4, Class 3 vehicle, yes, you could lease it through a third-party provider. Jim Pattison, huge shout out. They're great to work with. Jim Patterson has helped us leasing a lot of our fleet, but that's only limited up to Class 3. Certain OEMs themselves cannot sponsor fleets quite yet. The product has to be sold. And leasing companies themselves are still building faith in heavy-duty electric vehicles that it's just currently not. We've explored the opportunity of leasing Class 8 trucks, but it's currently not possible, as we were told. I'd say if you're stepping into a Class 3 realm, which is your BrightDrop or your 4D Transit, definitely leasing is a great choice, because technology is going to keep improving itself. Over the course of 36 to 48 months, you're going to see rapid advancements in technology as it's mass adopted by the public. Stepping into the heavy-duty class, unfortunately, right now, the product is so limited. There's not a lot of funding opportunities in terms of leasing or financing. So a private enterprise pretty much has to step both toes in and get into the heavy duty. But Class 3, I'm going to say that North America is doing a fantastic job. Chevrolet's done a fantastic job building the BrightDrop vans, by far the most superior cargo product that we've tested out. Just to summarize it, up to Class 3, leasing is the best option. Anything above that, unfortunately, leasing is just still not available.
What would your message be to a fleet operator that's looking to electrify vehicles in their fleet? What's the biggest piece of advice that you could give somebody that's starting this journey, whether it be a fleet manager, maybe it's a municipality, maybe it's a private organization, but they're getting all the information that they can right now? What would your advice be, given your experience and skill?
It's a very interesting question. I'll put it this way. We've often heard about people, planet, profits being put into different order based on how the business operates. But when you have an 100% electric fleet, you sort of put all those three into the same category. You're doing it for the people, which is your team that drives the vehicles. They don't have to be in smoke pits all day. They don't have to walk past idling combustion engines. They get a very safe work environment. They get a very quiet work environment, and they get a very less bumpy work environment. Planet, sustainability at its peak. You're not, again, burning carbon to get work done. And profits, your cost savings are literally insane when you have an electric vehicle fleet. I'll jump into the cost saving aspect a little bit more. I will often hear fleets complain that diesel and gas prices are all-time high. This is preposterous. How are we supposed to operate at a profit? Well, electricity rates are all-time low. So take advantage of that. Mm-hmm. Buy a BEV, battery electric vehicle drivetrain, which does the same job as your internal combustion. If you're in the last mile industry, go that route. You have the opportunity to drop your cost and still the same caliber of work being accomplished. It would be a no-brainer to make the switch. So again, it's the first time ever that in the last mile industry, people, planet, and profits are in the same order.
Great segue into just talking about the team, your drivers. Tell us a little bit about what training that they've gone through to sort of operate the vehicles. Give us sort of a little bit of a snapshot about why they're stoked about driving electric.
Well, the biggest one is make sure you plug your vans in at night.
Yeah.
So I got this real world example from my driver. We were in a meeting a couple months ago, and then he drives a 99 7.3 diesel, which is a massive diesel motor. After he started spending 7 to 8 hours a day in an electric van all day, he said, I could literally breathe the difference. Literally, he could breathe the combustions in, and he noticed the difference that he never did in his life, so he made an electric switch. It's all about breathing clean air, and then I think also a responsibility for employers to provide your employees with the world-class equipment to use. Electric vans, I cannot emphasize enough how decent the drive terrain is. You don't have that transmission clunk. You cannot feel the shifting of the gears. You cannot feel the differentials fighting with each other on which one's going to come into play. You don't have to take these in every 6,000 kilometers for lubrication. You don't have to worry about the exhaust leaks. You don't have to worry about walking behind these vans and breathing in the fumes. Your customers love you. We show up at the doorsteps of people and they love it. The public encourages fleets to go electric. You don't have to hear a gas guzzling motor outside of your house parked for 5 minutes every day. And the benefits just keep going on further from there.
Yeah. I've heard you talk a little bit about the low carbon fuel standard in British Columbia, carbon credits. Give us a bit of a rundown about what your role is with that, and if you're utilizing that mechanism to, have sort of ROI on some of your charging infrastructure.
Yeah, sure. BCLCFS is sort of not an uncharted territory, but an uncharted territory for most.
Yeah.
When you speak of carbon credits, it sounds like an alien term. But when you speak about carbon tax, it doesn't. So I think it's only fair first for BCLCFS to exist for fleets that are running on low carbon. Think of your electricity that you're pumping into your batteries as a clean alternative fuel. And clean alternative fuels are incentivized by governments all over the world, not just Canada, not just British Columbia. LCFS plays a massive role in your ROI for your chargers. To put into perspective, British Columbia has 98% clean electricity, which is hydro. It's almost 100% after the Site C dam, but a great opportunity for us to be able to use clean fuels. So carbon credit plays a crucial role, especially with the size of charging that fleets endure, for you to be more profitable. And that's not the only thing to consider. You're offsetting carbon. And that's a bigger reward than just getting paid for your carbon credits. We have CFR in play now as well, which is which is Clean Fuel Regulation by the federal government of Canada. And then we have the provincial LCFS. They do pay good, but I think the competitive edge is just more than what they're paying, but it's a carbon offset. So, for example, we've eliminated 192 metric tons of carbon emission in our fiscal year of 2024. We're expecting 350 tons in our fiscal year of 2025. When you put that into perspective, that's almost 5,600 trees. That is almost 22,000 liters of gasoline and diesel replaced. And LCFS sort of strengthens those metrics and adds more evidence to it that it is true, perhaps, that if you have an electric fleet, you are offsetting carbon by using clean energy by the province of British Columbia. It might be the case in British Columbia, but it might not be the case in Alberta, which again encourages provinces to produce more clean energy, because now we have a way to use clean energy to offset carbon. What Moving Mountains Logistics does, which is different than any other organization that we know of so far, is that we do not keep any proceedings from our carbon credits. We pass it on to our contractors.
Wow.
We pass it on to people that provide us the opportunity to use an electric fleet. So think of it this way. If you work with a conventional diesel fleet, there's a fuel surcharge. I'll use this as a marketing moment for Moving Mountains Logistics. But if you work with MML, it's a fuel discount. It's a green economy, to summarize. We have a new economy that's a green economy, and we're well versatile in it.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel for more updates on fleet electrification and other sustainable transportation solutions. Thanks for watching the Go Electric Fleet Show.